Well, hello, Dr. Ron here. I'd like to ask you a question. What does obsolescence, lifelong learning, and UTA's CSE department's certificate program have in common? And no, this is not an exam or quiz. I'll give you the answer. The answer is you. And if you'd like to learn more about this, please stay tuned to my interview with Graduate Advisor Donna French from UTA's CSE department. With that, I'll see you on the flip side. Well, hello everyone. This is Dr. Ron, and I'm back with you for another episode of Boomer Life Lessons and Stories. Today, we have the privilege of talking with one of my colleagues out at the University of Texas at Arlington. She's a graduate advisor, Donna French. And before we go there, I would just like to remind you, if you could, please like, share, and subscribe. Welcome, Donna. How are you doing?
I'm doing good. Summer classes are in full swing now and keeping busy.
Really? So what are you teaching this semester?
I am teaching CSE 3318, which is our algorithms class. It's a required class for all of our undergrad CS majors.
Now that's kind of the foundation of everything that we live and do with our technology.
Yes.
I was just having a conversation with Dr. Hong Jing this morning, our chair. He came to speak at the Rotary Club, and we were talking about the impact of computer science and how far it reaches. And I made the statement that it's kind of like we're the guys and gals that sell the shovels and picks to the gold miners. They couldn't do their job without us. And so there's not one profession that you could speak of, I don't believe, that is not impacted by what we do here and what our friends and colleagues at other universities and companies do. Yeah.
I completely agree with that. I tell my students that all the time, that just about any company, business, industry these days has some kind of IT support behind it. They may not own it themselves or have it in-house, but they're using someone else to do it.
Right. It's IT, it's the computer programmers, the computer designers. It's all of that rolled up into creating applications and the system of systems that these applications run on. So all very, very interesting. So you said in industry, you've worked out there. Was it, where did you work? Can you share that with us?
I worked for Radio Shack Corporation for 22 years. I was a software developer in their supply chain. I worked on their system that ran their distribution centers that at one point we had across the country.
You know, I greatly miss Radio Shack. I was a repeat customer. And if I needed anything from developing, my circuits or equipment, I would go to Radio Shack and buy it. And that was one of those great institutions with a long history that for whatever reason didn't stay up with the times. I'm not sure what happened there. But in any case, how interesting was it working there?
I worked with a lot of interesting people. Was doing remote working before it was, so common these days. Mm-hmm. I worked with people across the country that I worked with for 20 years and never met in person. So we were doing it remotely, 20 years ago.
I've been there. Yeah, I've communicated with people through telecons and video telecons, but never got to meet them. And some I did meet where I was only having voice conversations. And you develop these ideas of what people are like online, but when you really meet them, they're completely different, right? And that's not a bad thing. That's just, us going with how we see the world at times. Well, how did you end up at UTA and the CSE department?
Well, as you may know, Radio Shack has not done so well in the last few years. I was there for the two bankruptcies and coming out of those bankruptcies and being bought by another company. And in 2017, the current company that owned the name Radio Shack decided to completely shut down our IT department. So they completely laid off the whole IT department in June of 2017, and they kept me around for another month to stand up a new warehouse management system online. And then in July, they laid me off. There were 4 other people left in the IT department that had once been 500 strong.
So that was the motivation then for some type of job change, right? How did you end up at UTA?
Well, actually, my husband was already at UTA. Back in 2008, when Radio Shack had their first very large layoff, made national news at the time, I decided I wanted to do something different. So that's when I went back to graduate school, and so did he. He was in grad school at UTA working on his master's in computer science, and he had graduated and was teaching as an adjunct. So he was an adjunct at the time that I was laid off from my job at Radio Shack. So some colleagues told him, ask her to come in for an interview for an adjunct position. And I did. And I started as an adjunct in 2018, January.
Yeah. Were there any surprises in the transition from corporate America to academia?
It is different. A lot more hands off than I was somewhat used to. I mean, my last couple of years of Radio Shack, because of the cuts and lack of management, I was pretty much on my own for those couple of years. But academia is definitely very, very different in that sense. Mm-hmm. The structure is different.
What are some of the things that you enjoy about teaching?
I thoroughly enjoy feeling like I'm making a difference. I put my heart and soul into my job. I worked weekends, I worked on vacations to make it work. And ultimately it didn't work. The company is basically gone now. And with my job at UTA, I feel like the work that I do, the help I give these students to help them with their education, truly will make a lasting impact. And I really like that.
Truly. I mean, I tell the students that they are the next generation of movers and shakers of the world forever, it seems. That's a line from Arthur O'Shaughnessy's poem Ode. And I asked them, do you want to be moved or shook? Or do you want to be one of the movers and shakers? And of course, you know the answer. They all want to be the movers and shakers. And that's a good thing. I tell them also that I want to be sitting in my rocking chair on my front porch, pointing up there and saying, I remember them when. Yes. So that says a lot about education, doesn't it?
Yes, yes. And my first batch of students that I had, my first semester, several of them just went through graduation. And it was such a pleasure to attend their graduations and meet their families and hear how successful they've been. So that I've finally reached that. I've been here long enough to have that first batch graduate. So
I was teaching at university in Florida while I was still in the aerospace and defense industry before I retired. And a few years after that, my wife and I were taking our family out to Disney, and I heard my name shouted out, and I turned, and there was a former student. He ran up to me with his family and made the introductions, and it was really good to see how he was doing and what that education meant. But I guess here's the big question that we probably need to chat about. Mm-hmm. Are they done when they graduate with learning?
Computer science especially is ever changing. You really have to keep up. That was one of the issues I faced at my job. It was as far as my education and my computer science knowledge was pretty stagnant because my company was being stagnant. It would have been better for me to have some opportunity to go learn something new. And again, even if your company is doing maybe the latest and greatest, you need to keep up with that. Your education can't really stop because the field doesn't stop. Things keep changing. I mean, I I look at what I teach my students in the CSE 1320 intermediate programming class that I teach. And I teach them more in one semester than I think I learned in a year of my bachelor's, because it was a few years ago. So times change. So even after you graduate, it's important to keep up.
I'm amazed that our students are able to take all the inputs that they get during the different courseworks in a semester and assimilate it into part of who they are. And that's really the key. It's not something that's just in and out. It's something that changes you and changes your life. So I suspect that we're talking then about lifelong learning and obsolescence. If you don't practice lifelong learning, you obsolesce right out of the workforce. And by the way, that's not just true of computer science. It's true of all the professions and all the trades, wouldn't you say?
Well, it is. And it's interesting. My daughter is a high school teacher, and my youngest daughter is studying to become a high school teacher. And
runs in the family.
As a teacher, they will have to continue learning for the rest of their careers. It's expected. I mean, my daughter, that's a high school teacher now, lives in Houston. She is attending UTA's AP Summer Institute because as an AP teacher, she has to continue her training, even though she's been out of school for almost 10 years.
Yeah.
It's expected of their occupation.
Yeah. So it's not just something that's good to do. It really becomes something that is urgent and a must do, a priority in order to stay viable in your profession, whether we're talking about, doctors and lawyers and engineers and scientists that do research, or we're talking about trade people that are electricians, plumbers, etc. Lifelong learning is critical to stay current.
Yes.
So with that being said, what do you do? How do you manifest the practice of lifelong learning?
Well, it takes a degree of dedication. I mean, your life, if you have children, if you have a job, you have obligations. So when my husband and I both went back to school, as our children were older at the time, we just took it one class at a time. And yes, we spent weekends and nights studying. I mean, sometimes I had to stay up till 3 or 4 a.m. to get an assignment done because work had kept me busy up to that point.
Been there, done that.
So it does take a level of dedication, but I mean, it took me 5 years to earn my master's degree while I was working full time. I took it one class at a time, but it was 5 years. It wasn't a big deal at that point. I was able to pay for it as I went, and I got done with it. And now that I'm done, that's all that matters. But you do have to have a level of dedication. It can be hard, especially when you have so many other obligations in life, but you really have to stick to it.
By the way, if you hear any spurious noises in the background, that's that floor being replaced I told you about before we began. There's knocking on the walls and everything. Yeah, I agree. But do you say that, or would you say that perhaps passion plays a role in it? You have to be passionate about it?
Yes. You really have to be doing something that interests you, something that you're not going to keep working on it if it's, it takes a level of dedication that you're not going to have just because. You have to find it interesting. It has to be something that you're passionate about and enjoy doing. Otherwise, you're not going to stay up till 2 a.m. to get an assignment done.
I think passion invigorates the person and allows them to be successful, where if they're just doing it as something to check the box off, perhaps they won't do as well as they could, right?
Right.
Well, you talked about graduate school. I think that's a great avenue for additional learning, part of the lifelong learning. But aren't seminars and other things along those lines? What do we like in our university here and our department?
Well, here in our university, yes, we have our master's programs and our PhD programs, and those are fabulous tools to get you further in your career. But in the short term, if you're looking for something a little bit if you're not ready to dedicate those 5 years like I did, we do have some new certificate programs.
Oh, really? So the certificate programs, is it just one course of study, and how many courses would you have to take?
We have them in several areas, and generally it's about 4 courses, 4 to 5 courses for each one. We have several different ones, so it just depends. And some of you may be thinking, well, I don't have a CS background. I'm a mechanical engineer or a chemist or something like that. Well, we have a special course to help you get ready for these other courses, to kind of catch you up on some of the computer science theory and concepts. And even if you're, for example, in my case, if your CS degree is a little bit dated, then you can also take this general course to help get you ready for, if you feel intimidated by, wow, I'm not sure I'm ready to be in these master level CS courses. Well, then you can take this intro class. It covers a variety of topics and it prepares you for diving into these more specific certificate classes.
It's interesting that you should say that, because in industry, I was a director of engineering and I had a very large organization. I had mechanical engineers that programmed. I had double E's that programmed, and they were kind of self-taught. They might have taken a class, at night, but they were fairly good at it. So it's not something that I guess you have to really make a complete change, but you can take it a little bit at a time and develop some new skills. What are some of the main topical areas that are covered by these certificates?
Well, one of them is artificial intelligence.
Oh, that's big.
So that's, you want to understand the different AI techniques. And again, if that is something that interests you, but you're unsure if you have the background for it, we have that foundations class for you to start with.
Does that include things like machine learning and that sort of thing?
Yes.
Oh,
well, we also have a certificate in deep learning.
Deep learning. Okay,
yeah.
So can you tell me just a little bit about that, perhaps?
Well, that involves neural networks and talking about memory and attention, specifically like attention networks. So that really digs into the fundamentals of it, deep learning, matrix computations, classification, how do we do that? And then if you're more interested in maybe a hardware side of it, if maybe you're more on the computer engineering, you want to get, into the hardware, we do have 3 certificates in that area, in real-time systems and embedded systems. That one is offered through the CSE department and the EE department. So that's where you learn about FPGA devices and multi-threaded programming. So that is more of getting into the real hardware of it. They're bare metal custom real-time operating systems. So, those type of things sound interesting. We have system on chip design. So again, if you're interested in some of the hardware.
This is one, system on a chip.
Yeah.
your iPhone. It's amazing what they can do with, or what we can do now with our cell phones. But I'm sorry to interrupt. Please continue.
And the 3 certificates, the embedded systems, the field programmable gate array, FPGA, and system on chip design, and the real-time systems, they have their own foundation class. It is slightly different from the foundation class for other certificates. It is more geared for the computer engineering side. So again, if you find some of these fields, these topics interesting, but you're unsure if you're ready, you can take that foundation class and see if you're prepared.
So some of the other certificate focuses of study in the computer science area, you said deep learning, what else?
Deep learning, artificial intelligence, big data, and data science. Yeah. Data science has become a really hot topic recently. Yeah. So if you're interested in large scale data analysis, big data analytics, data mining is a hot topic. Machine learning, cloud computing. If you want to learn about cloud computing, you can do that in this big data management data science certificate.
All of that is pretty germane to today's environment. I mean, if you're not, as a business, dealing and working online in some form or fashion, and leveraging the applications that are available to you, you're going to fall behind the competition. It is a Darwinian environment. They're highly competitive out there.
And another very hot topic, and one that is just getting more and more important in the world in general, we have a graduate certificate in cybersecurity and privacy.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I think some hospitals have been victimized and pipelines have been victimized by cyber attacks, and actually their data has been held hostage. So
Yes,
cybersecurity has become, well, it has been and has become even more so a critical thing that we as individuals and as companies and universities and other organizations must pay attention to and have expertise in. Not meaning individually, but perhaps somebody on the workforce is working in that area for us.
right. And even the recent elections, there was a lot of cybersecurity talked about with that, protecting systems from attacks.
Sure, sure.
So,
So this is all part and parcel to lifelong learning and continuing to keep yourself current so that you can avoid obsolescence. But say they're not ready to take a complete course of study for a degree. These certificates are 4 or 5 classes long. Are these courses that they take in the certificate program? I guess we'd call them credit-bearing degree leading. Can they be applied to graduate degrees at some point in the future?
yes, yes, except for the foundation course. Now, not everyone would have to take that foundation course. You can take it if you don't have a CS degree, or again, I would suggest it that even if you have an older CS degree, it might be good to brush up. But the other 4 to 5 classes, depending on the certificate that you're going to take, yes, those would count towards a master's degree if you decided to continue on.
Donna, do you have anything you could put up on the screen that shows where they can go to on the internet and find more about these certificate programs that are being
Yes,
offered by
yes.
UTA CSE department?
Let me share my screen. So if you just go to Google and you Google UTA CSE graduate certificates, you'll pretty much get to this page. You can see the actual address up here. But here it lists each of our certificates. So there's the artificial intelligence, big data management, cybersecurity, deep learning. Now here's one we hadn't talked about yet, unmanned vehicle systems.
Oh yeah, that's quite germane too today with the expectation of lots of companies integrating unmanned vehicles for deliveries to customers and actually driving people around town without specifically a person being the driver. There's a lot
Right,
there.
right. And they're testing out a system like that right here on the UTA campus.
I heard about that. You're right.
There's our real-time systems, the system on chip, and the embedded systems. So this will tell you about the different topics. And if you look at each of them here, this will say this one takes 4 graduate level courses. So if you go back up here, you can go here to apply. And that link will take you to where you can apply for the certificates.
Fantastic. And does it also provide a link if they have questions, further questions about enrolling in a certificate program, that sort of thing? Can they talk to a live person?
That's where you can go to academic advisors, and that will take you to our advisor page. This CSE grad advising at uta.edu, that is a mailbox that is always monitored. So if you send something to that, you will get a response from someone. And here's our graduate advising team.
Look there, there's Donna French. How about that?
There I am.
Yes.
So if you need any information at all on the certificate programs, you can email us individually, but I really highly suggest you email the CSE grad advising because that mailbox is Monday through Friday, morning to evening, continuously monitored. And that is the quickest way to get a response.
Now, it's my understanding, you correct me if I'm wrong, that these are not online programs. They're on-campus type programs presently.
Yes, they are on-campus programs, and you will, depending on the number of students and the scheduling, you may be in a class only of your peers who are also in the certificate programs. But understand that these classes are also offered as part of our MS and PhD program. So you may be in a mixed class with our master's students and our PhD students.
Well, that's fantastic. Hey, Donna, I really appreciate you coming on with us and sharing this information about yourself, your career and about how one could possibly practice lifelong learning and stay current, which is really key to viability in the workforce. And I would encourage everybody. I mean, from my practical experience, I got my graduate degrees and doctoral degrees after work, and it can be done. It just does take a little bit of planning and a little bit of passion to make it happen. But I will say this, in my experience, it has been well worthwhile. And I would encourage anybody that wants to improve themselves and perhaps enhance their ability to get the job of their dreams to practice lifelong learning, and perhaps contact you at UTA and our CSE department.
Yes.
All right.
We look forward to hearing from you.
Super. Any final words before we go?
I think these are a great offering. They're new, and I think they're just for those of you who are working in an industry. This is a great way to kind of get started. And, if you've ever thought about a master's or a PhD, but that's a little overwhelming, which is understandable, these certificate programs, 4 classes, you can have that certificate. And then if it's something you're really enjoying and you want to learn more, you can go on with your master's and those 4 classes will apply. So it's a great vehicle for getting started on that, but it's also just a great vehicle to get yourself some more learning and to improve your career.
Well, thank you for your time. And I do hope to see many of our viewers out there on campus, and I hope they get to interact with you, because it's always been a pleasure as you and I have worked together on different committees and seen each other at school. All right, with that, we're signing off. All the best.